Your number one competitive advantage into the future is going to be your ability to speak powerfully, to hold space, to command attention, to not only command attention, but to convert attention. Your only true competitive advantage to stand out in any marketplace in the future is going to be through the power of your spoken word content. Welcome to episode 2 of the Speaker Driven Business Podcast. I'm really looking forward to this particular conversation. We have people come into our world from all different directions, and usually they see us as somebody who is a speaker trainer. Now, our business, as you're about to discover, is a lot more than that. But the reason why they're thinking that is because when we think speaking, we think professional speaker, we think big stages. And I want to actually smash that apart, because usually once people get into our world, it's like, oh, you have strategy and you know how to build a business, and there's workshops and facilitation, and there's all these different platforms, and you know how to actually get people speaking really strongly across all of them. We talk about speaking with strength, power, and grace, and they get kind of really surprised by the fact that there is a whole ethos around building businesses around people's spoken word content. And that's what has driven me to do this podcast series. So I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually define what is a speaker-driven business. And a speaker-driven business is this. It is quite simply any business that can cement its position, amplify its profile or individual, amplify profile, or accelerate reach and revenue through spoken word content. So through the power of speaking. Now, I don't know about you, but as you're listening to that, you're probably suddenly thinking, hang on, that could be every person in every business. And yes, it could be. And I believe now more than ever that we actually have to be speaker-driven business first. You know, there's no doubt about the fact that marketing communications is absolutely critical in this world, that we have to move beyond the reach of, you know, word of mouth and things like that, and doing a good job and having a good idea. We know that. But the frontier of actually standing out in your competitive advantage into the future is going to come from your ability to speak with strength, power, and grace into your lived and worked experience in a way that cuts through the noise, stands out in the market, and has people leaning into you. Now, the reason why it is so important is because of the world we find ourselves landing in. Now, that world is a world full of AI and machine learning and technological races that we could never have dreamed of even a decade ago. Hell, even think about the changes in technology just since that big thing called a pandemic hit us. So we're actually living in a world now that is really, I want to say, infiltrated by AI, machine learning. We had the explosion of natural language processing platforms, so ChatGPT and Jasper and the like of it, at the end of 2022 and into the beginning of 2023. Now, there was a massive conversation that ignited globally as those things took off into the mainstream at that time about what it was going to mean for authors and what it was going to mean for speakers and business people and copywriters and marketers and communicators, because we were getting inundated with these messages. You know, it's going to be able to produce 10,000 books a month, and it's going to be able to produce, you know, all your marketing copy, and it's going to be able to write your speeches and do your things. Now, there's a few things that we've realized since then, and most of us knew right from the start. Number one is you're going to have to fact check. Right? If you depend purely on, well, we call her Coco. We use ChatGPT and we call her Coco in this office. If you rely purely on what Coco brings to the table, then you're going to end up in trouble. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of time to fact check what someone else brings to me. I'm busy enough fact checking my own things. That's number one. Number two is it's become very apparent that the purpose of these natural language processing platforms is really what we're all starting to use them for, is to systemize, it's to streamline, it's to get us off the white page. I say quite frequently that Coco is my best brainstorming partner. I will quite often use nothing that she brings back to me, but what she brings back to me actually triggers other thinking, which then creates the very thing I'm looking for. But there is no denying that AI, machine learning, all of these platforms are actually adding to the noise in the marketplace? Who has noticed Facebook ads are going up? Who has noticed that it's harder to get organic traffic? Who has all those things? Who has noticed it's harder to get heard? Full freaking stop. Right now, that noise is not going to diminish anytime soon. And as we saw, when things happen that create, I won't say a global shutdown, but that global stay in place process that we had to go through with the pandemic, it gets even noisier in a confined space, right? So your only way, if there's going to be so much content generated by AI and machine learning, there's going to be so many businesses that need to find a different way to survive and cut through the noise. And there's going to be so many people spending a lot of time investing in working out whether who they want to engage with is authentic and genuine and the real deal. Your number one competitive advantage into the future is going to be your ability to speak powerfully, to hold space, to command attention, to not only command attention, but to convert attention. Your only true competitive advantage to stand out in any marketplace in the future is going to be through the power of your spoken word content. There is no mistake about that. There is no mistake about that. It has always been important to you speaking as part of the mix to make sure that you are able to do the things we spoke about, to cement your positioning, to amplify your profile, to accelerate your reach and your revenue. But now it's critical. Now it's mission critical. So a speaker-driven business, that definition should be able to apply to almost anything and anyone in the activities they're doing. So let's talk about the 5 categories of speakers that we generally come across. And actually, there's a bonus 6 one that I'll throw in as well. So the 5 categories of speakers when it comes to a speaker-driven business is, number 1 is a professional speaker. So a professional speaker is somebody who's paid to speak. They're paid to speak on stages. They're paid to speak from platforms, and they're paid really good money consistently. The other thing with a professional speaker is that 80% or more of your revenue actually comes from speaking related activities. So speaking from the platform, facilitating and running workshops where it's all your own intellectual property, emceeing, stand-up comedian, those sorts of things. That is actually speaking driven activities. And if you're a professional speaker, which is our first category of speaker, then 80% of your revenue is going to come from that. The second category is the professional who is paid to speak. So this is somebody who has cemented an incredible career or entrepreneurial position, and they may have already been speaking, but now they're shifting gears to make it a revenue stream. Now they're shifting gears to being valued for their expertise. So professionals who are paid to speak will build their paid speaking career alongside and adjacent to whatever it is they do in their everyday life. So whether it's their business, whether it's their career, they have no intention of walking away from what it is that they actually do. One of our clients that I worked with for 4 years is a consulting engineer, and she did not walk away from that career for the first 4 years of her speaking. She now has speaking has overcome demand, and she's winding those commitments back, but she has no interest whatsoever in leaving that career behind. So that's our second category, a professional who is paid to speak. The third category is the predecessor, I guess, to that, but also can outlast it. So the third category is a subject matter expert or a business builder. So these people may never get paid an actual fee for speaking, but they speak so well and their content and their expertise is so in demand that every time they take to a stage, they are able to generate significant revenue. They know that every time they speak, their business will grow. They know that every time they speak, their collaborations and partnerships will grow. They know that every time they speak, something elevates in their business. So that's the third category, subject matter expert, business builder. The fourth category is one that is fast becoming my favorite as it comes more and more to the fore. And that is the founders and accelerators of charities and movements. So they quite often will not be looking for payment, but they are looking to accelerate their movement. They are looking to get partnerships and buy-in and support and so much more for their charities and their movements. Now, the really good and powerful founders will end up turning this into a revenue stream in its own right, but they are actually doing it predominantly to accelerate their movement, to actually take their charity through to being sustainable. I don't know about you, one of the reasons why this fills my heart with joy every time we have one of these people come towards us is that charity landscape is getting very busy. It's kind of densely populated. And for charities to stand out, there has been this tendency over time for them to really use dramatic and sometimes traumatic lived experience stories to kind of shock and awe people into the fact that something must be done with this. And whilst there's a place for that, it is not our only avenue as a charity movement or charity and movement founder or accelerator to actually amplify our position and our profile, to cement our position and to rapidly accelerate our reach and our revenue as a charity founder. We don't have to go there. There's so many other ways to do it. There is a place for the big stories, but it doesn't have to be the everyday stories. And working with these founders has filled my heart. Category number 4 is a charity or movement founder or accelerator. And then the 5th category of speaker that we come across is the person who is intrinsically motivated just to reach one more person. They are the people you will hear say, I don't care if I never get paid. I just want to help one person. I just want to change the lives of one person. If I can make a difference in one person's life, then it will be worth it. Now, we're going to unpack that a little bit more in one of our later conversations, but they're generally the 5 categories of speakers. There is a 6th category that's emerging, and it's not really, this person can sit in any one of those 5 categories that we've spoken about. But usually what it is that this person has been asked or invited to speak because of their position, standing, or connections, or their experience. And what they've discovered when they've gone to do it, because they thought it'd just be another thing they do, is that they bombed. Right? It literally did not go to plan and they're confused, but they do know and they understand and recognize that there's going to be more of this. So they could fit into any one of those 5 categories, but it is the 6th type of speaker, the 6th type of motivation, I guess, that we see people coming towards us for. So when I talk about categories of speakers, it's kind of like, where do you want to sit? What is your motivation for doing this? And why this matters is because of 2 things. And the first is, it actually doesn't matter what category you are when it comes to building the craft of speaking. When it comes to building the craft of speaking, it is the same across all of those categories. I don't care who you are. And I don't care. I'm happy to have a conversation, even a fight with you. A robust discussion with you in the public arena on this one. It doesn't matter what category of speaker you are. What is motivating you to speak? What is your end destination as a speaker? It doesn't matter. The craft is the same. It's the principles of influence and persuasion. It is how we use our language and how we shape our stories. It's how we be in service to an audience. The principles are the same. The structures change, but the principles are the same. The craft build and what you need to do to become an incredible speaker is the same no matter what category is motivating you or you're moving towards. It does not matter. The craft build is the same. The second thing I want you to understand from this, and actually if you're a corporate speaker, if you're somebody who's in leadership or C-suite and you're listening on this podcast, stay with me because I'm going to share with you exactly how this translates for you. But the second thing that I want you to know and that I want you to understand is that where the difference is, why you need to understand which one of those you want to be or are becoming is because it's the strategy that changes. So the craft doesn't change. The craft also means you can move across the various structures for the various formats you'll use, but the craft doesn't change. What changes is the strategy. How do we apply this? How are we deploying this? Where do we go for this? What do we need to be able to show up for this? The strategy and the comms and the marketing around your comms and marketing in the spoken word content, that's what changes. And if people don't understand the subtle differences between those, then you're going to be dead in the water. You could end up in the wrong arenas. And that's not what I want for anyone because this is brutal. Speaking is a contact sport. So understanding exactly where it is you want to play and how you should be playing here is the most critical piece of advice I can give you at this point. So a speaker-driven business, we're all in that business. Understanding our category of speaker is really important, not for the building of the craft, not for understanding how to tell a great story, not for understanding how to engage with an audience, not for understanding how to move an audience from where they are now to where you want them to be, to where you never expected them to be, not for any of that. It's important to understand the strategy that must bump up against that craft so that you can get the results that you want. Now, I just mentioned that if you're in corporate, C-suite, leadership, organizations, or associations, stay with me because I'll translate this for you. This matters for you as well. Now, there's a lot of experts out there, particularly if you're on LinkedIn and those sorts of platforms, explaining why corporates need their personal brand, and that's a given. But whatever you're at the helm of, whether it's yours or the shareholders, whether it's a team or a global organization, your communication skills, your spoken word content have never been more important. Now, there are some subtleties and some nuances that you need in that corporate and association organizational space, but make no mistake, the craft of becoming a powerful speaker is the same. Your investment in it is the same. Your commitment to it is the same. And if you're not sure that I'm not speaking through my hat, in Australia here, for many, 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 many years, we had Bernard Salt talking across the country as a futurist and a demographer. He was a top billing consultant at KPMG. The research department was in KPMG. Now, he has now moved out and evolved his own. But the majority of his career, when we were all getting to know him as a speaker, he was a voice of data, analytics, demography, and future for KPMG. He established it that way. The other things I want you to think about, Steve Jobs was known as a masterful communicator, and he was not that when he left Apple the first time when he got kicked out. He knew when he came back that that was a skill that he needed. And there are countless accounts and recounts of exactly what he did to do that. And most recently, I've just completed reading a book by Carmine Gallo. Now, if you are interested in speaking, you should have all of his books in your bookshelf. And this one was called The Bezos Blueprint because it speaks into, unpacks and analyzes exactly what Jeff Bezos did to be an incredible communicator inside and outside of his business. He knew that the number one thing to get shareholders on board was be able to tell on point, completely grounded stories that got their attention and delivered understanding. And he knew that it was the same for his teams and his leadership. So don't underestimate the power of being a speaking-driven business, even if that speaking-driven business is not something that you own, right? We are all in the business of leading a speaking-driven business. If it's just us on our own, or if we're leading a global organization of hundreds of thousands of people, it doesn't matter. It's about the importance of every time we connect with another human being, from that 100 to that 100,000, that we are able to shift them from where they are now to where we want them to be, and further than that to where they never expected to be, and they're grateful for it. So, are you in a speaking-driven business? Does that answer now actually surprise you? Well, whichever answer it is, and wherever you find yourself on the speaker-driven business continuum, I just want you to know one thing. As we unfold these episodes and these conversations, you are absolutely 100% in the right place.